Hey guys, welcome back to the video. Today is July 1st, 2024. It is the beginning of the month, which means that I will be doing an updated 2024 election prediction between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And before we get started on this video, please like and subscribe, put down all your sections below and press that bell so that you get notifications for all my content. I really appreciate all the support and all the comments on my videos. And before we get started on this map, we're going to be going over some recent polling. We're going to be using Real Clear Politics and 538 for this video. And we can see here that Donald Trump does lead the popular vote right now by 2 percentage points. And it had been a really narrow race, in the beginning of June, but the past, 5 to 7 days has been really, really good for Donald Trump, as he had won the debate pretty easily, according to most people. The CNN poll, the Snap poll had him at 67%, thought he won. Meanwhile, they thought 33% Biden won. And he did actually have a pretty good news today coming out of the Supreme Court, where he was ruled in favor of his immunity case. So that'll definitely help him. And this week has been really, really good for him. And I expect those events to really help him boost up those poll numbers that he already had been leading. If we check some polls from after the debate, we can see that on Real Clear Politics, he does lead all of them on here, and as well as on 538, where he has been expanding his lead. He leads by 1.4% now, and all the recent polls, apart from one, have had him leading, any other candidate, and then Biden as well. So that's some good news for him. But without further ado, let's get started on this map, and we're going to be labeling the safe states, and I will pop up my little thing over here showing you all those margins. All the margins will be staying the same, and we're going to begin with the states that Donald Trump will win by 12% or more. And these are going to be the same states as usual, all the same states that he had won by 12% or more in the 2020 election, with the addition of a few: Alaska, which was around a 10-point win, and South Carolina, which was around an 11-point win. And the states of Iowa, Ohio, and Maine's 2nd Congressional District will all be moving into that safe column from 2020. I expect on average that Donald Trump will gain quite a few points in the popular vote. Biden had won it by around 4.5%, and this time around the polls right now are saying around a 2 to 3% point win for Donald Trump. If we go to the 5-way race on Real Clear Politics, we can see that 3%. So let's just say that the polls are accurate, more accurate than last time at least, which overestimated Democrats a lot. And let's say that the popular vote goes to Republicans, Donald Trump, by 2 to 3 percentage points. In that case, I do see a pretty equal swing among the country, but obviously a little more different in states that are more favorable trending. Iowa and Ohio, since they are pretty favorable trending states, and Maine 2nd, will all be moving into that 12 plus point range. I think Iowa is going to vote a little bit to the right of Ohio, maybe around 14 points, and 12 to 13 here. And I think Maine 2nd would just be over that 12-point win. But these are going to be the safe states for Donald Trump. Joe Biden will win these states by 12 percentage points or more. The states of California, Washington, Hawaii, Illinois, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, DC, Maryland, Delaware, Connecticut, Vermont, New York, Maine's 1st Congressional District. And you can see here there's a little bit less than usual. Colorado, I think, will be falling out of that safe margin. I think the state of Oregon will be falling out. In 2016, it wasn't even a safe margin. And then biggest surprise of all, the state of New Jersey. I think New Jersey is the one state in the Northeast that is usually safe. It will fall below that 12-point margin. Illinois could get close, but I still see it being in that safe margin. And Trump will have 149 and Biden will have 159. And we're going to be moving on to the likely states now. So these are the states between 6 and 12. Donald Trump will have these states of Texas and Florida first in this column. I mean, these two states have been very favorable for him. We can see the polls, 9.6% for Donald Trump in Florida in 538. And then if we check the state of Texas, very similar story, 8.4%. It had previously been, the margin had been decreasing a little bit, but it has been going back up once again past that debate, where Donald Trump has been gaining quite a little bit in the national polls. So those numbers are very favorable for him. And in Florida, he had won by 3.4%, and Texas in 5.6%. Florida is much of a surprise because it used to be such a swing state. In the past multiple elections, it had voted by very, very small margins. And then in 2020, it changed the course of the rest of the nation and voted to the right of what it did in 2016. I expect this state to vote at least 8 to 10 points to the Donald Trump. And I think that the state of Texas is going to vote in similar fashion to Florida, around 8 to 10 points towards Donald Trump. Moving on next to the likely Democrat states, and they will have quite a few that will be going in. First of all, the state of Oregon will be falling in that range. I expect around 11 to 12 point win. It's the state of Colorado, a very favorable state to the Democrats. Will not be trending that far to the right to be considered lean. I think it will still fall around a 7 to 8 point for Democrats. And the state of New Jersey, I think will be on that higher end, maybe around 10 to 11 percentage points for Joe Biden. And we can check some polls in New Jersey that have been released. And the latest one actually has Trump up by 1. The ones before that have Biden up by only 5 and 6 by Emerson College. This coefficient poll is definitely an outlier, but it's pretty surprising that Trump even has a lead to begin with. So I do expect New Jersey to be a lot closer this time around. And it seems that it will happen. And Donald Trump actually did have a rally there, and he actually was not too far off from it being a likely state in 2016. So I do expect this state to fall in that range. And that will be all for the likely states for Joe Biden. Donald Trump has a pretty good advantage, 219 to 191. And with the lean states, he will gain an even higher advantage because the states of North Carolina and the states of Georgia will easily be going into that lean column. North Carolina has been very favorable for Trump this time around. And Georgia, he has been absolutely dominating the polls in North Carolina. He's up by 6.7 percentage points on average. And he has not even lost a poll in a very, very long time. Same thing with the state of Georgia, but I wanted to check that 5-way race to show that he is up 9.2% in the state of North Carolina. Similar in Georgia, he's up 5.6% in the 5-way. In the 2-way, he's still up by 4%. And on the 538, we can see the same thing where he is up 6.6% in Georgia, and in the state of North Carolina, Donald Trump also leads by a whopping 7.2, which these are actually likely margins, but I suspect these margins will come a little bit down. And I think right now North Carolina is around a 5 to 6 point win for Trump, and Georgia is around a 3 to 5 percentage win for Donald Trump. And for some lean states for Joe Biden, we're going to begin with putting the state of New Mexico in that lean column, downgraded from that 10-point win in 2020. I expect this state to shrink pretty drastically to the right. And I think so is because of those Hispanic trends. And we can see, there hasn't been too much polling, but there had been one released that just have Biden up by 1 and by 2. The previous one had Biden up by 7. So averaging those out right there, we can see that Joe Biden has a pretty narrow lead. And some other polls released before do not have him up by too much. They have been tightening though, and this Republican internal obviously favors Republicans, but we see that it's very, very narrow still. And I expect this margin to come down quite a bit. I think right now Joe Biden will win the state of New Mexico by around 4 to 5 percentage points. A similar story with the state of Virginia, except Virginia, some people are saying, Virginia can flip, but I still do not think Virginia will flip. However, I do think it will not be even close to a 5-point win. When it went from a 5 to a 10-point win from 2016 to 2020, many people thought that it was just gone, completely gone, and it won't be competitive. But I think it will come back and be competitive this time around, since the polls have been so close. Even like a tie in some of the polls, and the rest have Biden up by very, very narrow margins. I think this election, Virginia will be even closer than 2016. I think Joe Biden will win Virginia by between 3 to 5 percentage points. And a few more. I think Nebraska second, due to its very strong left trend, is going to stay in the Democrat column by around 2 to 4 percentage points. I think the states of New Hampshire and the states of Maine will also stay narrowly in that column. Joe Biden did much better than Hillary Clinton in the states of Maine and New Hampshire, but polls indicate that New Hampshire and Maine will both be coming back a little bit towards that center. I think Joe Biden will win the state of New Hampshire by around 3 to 5 percentage points as well, and the state of Maine by that same margin, maybe a bit closer because of how favorable the polls have been for Donald Trump. However, I do expect these states to vote very, very aligned with each other because they're so similar in that margin. And right now we see that Trump is at 251, Biden is at 216, and we're going to come now to the most competitive states, I think, in this election. Donald Trump only needs to win the state of Pennsylvania to win the election, but we're going to get started on these tilt states, beginning with Arizona and the state of Nevada. I think right now Trump could possibly even win these states by a lean margin, but for the sake of their left trend and the fact that Joe Biden had won both in 2020, I think they will be both in that tilt column right now, on that edge with being a lean state. Right now, Donald Trump does hold pretty significant leads in the states of Arizona and Nevada. As you can see here, he leads by pretty comfortable margins outside of that margin error. And that's why I think right now, especially everyone even paying attention to the Sun Belt thinks that all of these Sun Belt states, apart from obviously New Mexico, have like an 80% chance or higher of voting for Donald Trump, while these Rust Belt states are projected to be a lot closer. And a similar story on 538, where we see Trump leading by 5% in Arizona, and in the state of Nevada, Trump leading by 3.7, which is outside of the margin of error. And now moving to the region that will most likely decide the fate of this election. It will be the Rust Belt, more specifically Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. I will think right now that Minnesota falls in that tilt column for Joe Biden. He had won the state by 7.1%, which is a lot larger than that 1.5% won by Hillary Clinton. So it's pretty important in considering that he expanded such a narrow lead. The polls in Minnesota right now have been much more narrow than the previous cycle. He only leads by 1.7%, according to 538. So it's pretty important to consider that. Donald Trump actually led a poll from Emerson College. But right now, I do think that Joe Biden holds a narrow lead in the state of Minnesota. Moving on to the state of Wisconsin, I think out of these Rust Belt states, it will be the easiest for Donald Trump to flip because, well, number one, it is the most favorable. It was the closest state in the Rust Belt. Joe Biden only won the state of Wisconsin by 20,000 votes as compared to a little bit larger margins in the states of Michigan and Pennsylvania. And Donald Trump only needs to win one of these three to win the election. And that's why right now he is so favored, because just with Wisconsin, he was already that 270 mark, a little bit over that. And the polls right now in the state of Wisconsin have been very tight. But remember, they are known for overestimating Democrats by a huge amount. As we can see here, Wisconsin, July 1st, 2020, Biden plus 6.5, 2016, Clinton plus 7.4, and we can remember how narrow those margins were there. So I can expect that, once again, Donald Trump will be underestimated. He is up in that 5A race, and also in 538, it is a very, very narrow race. He has retaken the lead, actually, and he leads now by 1 percentage point. So that's very interesting. I think Wisconsin right now will fall in that tilt column. Similar for the state of Michigan. I was originally very skeptical on Michigan, but due to the past week and how bad Joe Biden has been performing, he does lead by 1.4% on that 5-way race. The past three polls have had Donald Trump up. And on 538, it's also been a very, very narrow race where those two candidates are very deadlocked. But once again, as we see in other states, Donald Trump has taken that lead. He has regained that lead, and he has led by 1.8% according to 538. So this is why right now, especially, I am much more sure than last month's prediction that these states will be for Donald Trump. And obviously, these things can change and we can see what happens. But right now, I think the momentum is really in Donald Trump's favor, especially since all the events that have been unfolding in the last week. Democrats aren't even sure if they want Joe Biden anymore. Joe Biden and his family have been saying, no, we're sticking with Joe Biden. So it's definitely a big mess. The Democrat Party, I think there are going to be a lot of third parties in the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And if we check back in history, 2016, Gary Johnson won a pretty large third-party margin, and this is, primarily what gave Donald Trump that win in 2016. And as you see, I filled out Pennsylvania. Also, I think right now will be a win for Donald Trump. I mean, he leads by 2.8%, and this is the one state that I talked about in March and April where Joe Biden had the most favorable lead out of all those swing states, and he has just been dropping off recently, and Donald Trump has been expanding his lead. I mean, in the 5-way race, Trump leads by 3 percentage points. So that's, not something to ignore, especially because Pennsylvania has polls more accurate than the rest of those swing states. I mean, generally, we can see it still did underestimate Donald Trump, but it did so a lot less than the other 2 swing states. Still, he leads by 2 percentage points on average. This state will be going to the tilt column, and this will be my final map for the month of July, 312 to 226. I think right now, if Joe Biden continues to falter, and if the debate performance, if there is one in August, I believe, or September, that Donald Trump will, have potential to gain in states like Minnesota, maybe flip it, gain a little bit in Virginia, start attacking states like New Hampshire, Maine at large, and to an extent New Mexico. But right now, I think this is where the map stands, 312 to 226. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Check out my other videos, and I'll see you guys on the next one.